The following program contains graphic images. Viewer discretion is advised. Today on an all-new Dr. Phil. Domestic abuse survivors.
I literally could hear the bones in my face breaking.
I was like, he really is going to kill me.
I quickly thought my mom is going to die.
And their ongoing struggle.
It can come back in a flash.
Right, almost like it was yesterday.
Every day is pretty hard for me.
And I'm going to tell you what I think should happen here. It can make a huge difference with you. Today's going to be a changing day in your life. You've never had anybody working harder to bring you to the threshold of change than right now. We all love Christmas, right? For Stacy, Christmas Day 2016 started as a joyous day spent with her family and her children, just like we love. But tragically, it ended with her 13-year-old daughter making this frantic 911 call while her mother, covered in her own blood, fought for her life.
And 911, what's the address to emergency?
My stepdad is trying to take my baby brother.
What's that? What was that? You just stop there. What's your name, sweetheart? I got plenty of help coming.
Oh, my God! My stepdad shot my mom!
Okay, Dad shot Mom. Where was she shot at?
In the, stomach.
Shot in your stomach.
Stacey, stay awake. Stacey, stay awake, okay? Stay with us, Stacey. Stay awake. No, you're gonna make it, Stacey. Oh, my God!
So what happened between opening Christmas presents and Stacy clinging to life? Stacy claims it was an uninvited visit from her ex-boyfriend who would not accept that their relationship was over.
Police are looking for a man who they say shot his ex-girlfriend Christmas Day.
The neighbors I spoke with today tell me the suspect is an angry guy with a really bad temper, and they say they expected something like this would probably happen one day.
When I pulled into my driveway, he pulled in right behind me. My niece and my daughter were with me. I immediately sent the girls upstairs. I told him that he needed to leave, and he said, well, I'm taking my son. Then Adrian pulled a knife out and waved it at me. I was panicking.
My mom came into my room and she asked me to dial 911.
And 911, what's the address to emergency?
My stepdad is trying to take my baby brother.
Adrian saw that they were on the phone quietly and figured out what was happening. He said, you're not gonna make it to see the new year. And that's when he turned around with a 9mm pistol and shot me 2 times.
What's that? What was that? You just stop there. Okay, honey, what is that?
I remember my mom coming up the stairs, seeing the holes in her hoodie. I quickly thought, this is the end, like my mom is gonna die. My stepdad shot my mom!
Okay, Dad shot Mom. I got plenty of help coming.
Oh my God!
After I was hit, my ears were ringing. I was overcome by the smell. I was shocked. I was like, he really did it. He really is going to kill me.
Where was she shot at?
In the, stomach.
Shot in your stomach.
I was losing massive amounts of blood quickly. I was in severe pain, and I was growing weak. I kept telling my daughter and my niece, I love you, and I was fighting, but I was scared.
I remember her leaning against the couch, her eyes rolling to the back of her head. Stacey, stay with us, Stacey.
Okay.
Stay awake. No, you're gonna make it, Stacey.
I had holes in me and blood everywhere. It looked like a murder scene. I felt powerless.
Stacey, stay awake. Stacey, stay awake, okay?
My daughter saying, please don't die, please don't die. I just blacked out.
I've got a lot of help coming that way, okay? We're going to take good care of her.
Okay, Stacey, they're coming in, or they're close.
When I woke back up, the ambulance loaded me up, and I told her, I'm going to make it. I'm not going to leave you. I refused to give up.
Shockingly, Stacy's attack isn't an isolated incident. It's been reported that in the U.S., 20 people per minute are physically attacked by partners. That's more than 10 million women and men a year, resulting in more than 20,000 calls a day to domestic violence hotlines. Now, while Stacy was in the hospital recovering from 2 point-blank range bullet wounds to the ribs and shoulder, her ex, Adrian, was on the run.
U.S. Marshals across the country have been looking for 36-year-old Adrian Permeter.
Permeter is considered armed and dangerous. If you see him, call police.
After Adrian shot me, he was on the run, and he was a part of a nationwide manhunt led by the U.S. Federal Marshals. While he was on the run, I was fighting for my life. I had multiple broken ribs, collapsed lung. I also took a bullet through the hand, so my hand was severed, lost a part of my spleen, part of my liver. I had a chest tube. It was a nightmare. When I asked the doctor if I was going to make it, he said, I'm going to do everything I can, but the look that he gave his colleague was terrifying. The surgeons and the doctors actually said that I was a homicide victim who woke up, that there wasn't really a medical explanation as to why I survived.
Authorities tracked down a fugitive wanted for shooting an Edmond woman on Christmas Day.
They finally found him in North Augusta, South Carolina, where his family lives.
Adrian was on the run for about a month, and one morning at about 6 a.m., I remember my dad waking me up and telling me he had been caught. I absolutely had an immediate sense of relief.
Well, Stacy, it's so good to meet you.
Thank you
and
for
I mean
having me.
that in different ways. It's good to meet you.
Thank you.
And I'm really glad you're alive to be met.
Thank you.
When something like this happens, it has a profound effect on you. I can't tell you that I know how you feel because I haven't been shot in front of my children and wondering, is it going to stop with me? Is it going to be them too? What was in your head at that point?
Well, immediately it was shock. I was frightened, very fearful. But I think more than that, I was just going through the motions of trying to get my family immediately safe. I believed I was about to die.
And then eventually, blood loss and all, you finally just pass out and collapse,
that's
right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Now, let's talk about where you are today. You remember this event with the same clarity and emotions as though it happened yesterday.
Correct. I wake up at night, typically, I believe, because in the past, he didn't respect any boundaries, and he would let himself into my home at all periods of the night. And so I think that sometimes that just resonates with me today.
And how long had it been since you had really broken up with him, split up with him, that this took place?
It was within 4 to 6 weeks, probably.
He denies ever abusing you.
Mm-hmm.
He denied shooting you.
Mm-hmm.
He denied having any involvement with
Correct.
that. He turned down a plea deal.
Multiple.
And where he could have taken a plea deal for 30 years and got 105 years in prison instead. But after he had been caught, they accidentally released him
Right.
On bail. And you said you were sitting around one afternoon and just got this sense, this inner
Mother's
foreboding.
intuition is what I call it.
Yeah, that just came over you that something wasn't right.
Correct. It was actually at about 11:30 at night, and I was in the same home that the shooting occurred, in bed with our son. And I had that feeling and decided to check online to make sure he was still in county, and couldn't find his mugshot, so I made the call, and they told me he'd bonded out several days sooner.
Do you believe that you suffer from PTSD?
I do, yes.
And you've been diagnosed with
Correct,
it?
yes.
And you believe that, in fact, you do have PTSD?
Right, and that's why there's so many times I kind of discount feelings of fear or paranoia that I go through, but that's why, like, that evening that you just mentioned where he was released, I was so glad that it's hard to know, is it a feeling of being paranoid? Do I dismiss it, or do I listen and pay attention?
Right. And describe some of your triggers. There are certain things that will really take you back in a flash to that second. What kind of things trigger you?
And it just catches me off guard, but it can be something as quickly as me blowing out a candle and that smell of smoke. So
And
it
so
can be
the smoke, because
anything.
you were shot at point blank
Correct.
range, and so you smelled the discharge of the gunpowder.
Yeah, it was
And so
strong.
the smoke, that gets to you
Yes,
at that
sir.
point. You understand that triggers neurological responses in you. Those aren't just emotional. Those are brain pathways that light up when you have those triggers. And so that's what takes you back. Stacy says not only is she struggling with the emotional scars left from being shot, so is her teen daughter. We're going to meet this brave young woman after the break.
coming. Oh my God!
I struggle with anxiety a lot right now, more than I ever have.
She'll have a hard time catching her breath. She'll get shaky and cry and withdrawals as a whole.
My mom gets upset at me because she thinks I'm just being lazy. I'm doing the best that I can.
And later,
You are incredibly lucky to be here. The reason why you don't know many people who have an experience like yours is because most of them don't make it.
you two women cheated death. Robin and I have often said the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship and the most likely time of violence is when the victim decides to break free. It's called separation assault. It's been reported that 75% of emergency room visits by battered women occur after separation. Now, Stacy claims she was shot twice after she left an abusive boyfriend. Now, he denies that he was ever abusive. He denies that he ever shot her.
As Adrian's trial began, I knew that there were some things I was going to need to reveal to my family. My family had suspicions that some of my injuries were the result of domestic violence by Adrian, but I did not come clean about that until the trial. I was humiliated, I was prideful, I thought it was something that maybe I could handle myself. The evidence was overwhelming. They had my eyewitness testimony, the eyewitness testimony of my niece and my daughter, his voice on the 911 call. His co-defendant ended up testifying against him, turned over state's evidence with the gun being found, the ballistics matching the bullets at the scene of the crime. In spite of all the evidence, he still denied and lied having any part of it. Several excuses. He didn't know anything had happened when he was arrested. He didn't even know why. One of them was that he came to visit his son, pulled up and heard gunshots in our home and got scared and fled, but didn't notify anybody. That's insane. I was the last person to testify, and it came with overwhelming emotion. This was my child's father, and I knew he was probably going to go away for a long time. The jury deliberated for less than 30 minutes, and it was guilty on all counts. Adrian was sentenced to 105 years, but it wasn't a happy ending for me. It was bittersweet. I wanted to see him change, and I naively believed that he could, and in hindsight doing so, I believe I enabled him to continue to hurt me. I did write a victim's impact statement. Adrian and I were about 2 feet away from one another. As I was reading my statement, he had the same intimidating, angry, disgusted look. That I could accept responsibility for tolerating and enabling and accommodating inappropriate behavior from a man whom I once loved. I couldn't catch my breath. I was shaking. It was one of the most highly emotional experiences of my life.
Well, Stacy says she has tremendous guilt about her daughter Ashton's trauma because it was her decision to bring her ex into their lives.
What's your name, sweetheart? I got plenty of help coming. Oh my God!
The fact that Ashton was there when I was shot has had a tremendous impact on her. She'll be really lethargic, have low energy. She likes to isolate herself in her bedroom. She'll have a hard time catching her breath. She'll get shaky and cry pretty easily, and withdrawals as a whole.
I struggle with anxiety a lot right now, more than I ever have. I get anxious over some of the smallest things. I have to mentally prepare myself to go pump gas in my car, to go to work. I have to mentally prepare myself for school, to get up and get ready. It's a hard struggle for me every day.
I don't know what Ashton's depression looks like. I can notice the symptoms and try to communicate with her, but I don't know how to help her. I can just tell her things like go take a walk and wash your face and get some coffee and call a friend, that it might help, but I believe that she's really clinically depressed. I feel powerless to help her.
I don't respond to texts. I don't answer calls. I stay in my bed. My grades have been struggling ever since. My mom gets upset at me because she thinks I'm just being lazy, but I don't think she understands that it's because of my depression.
I feel tremendous guilt as a parent that I endangered not only my life, but the safety of my children by allowing that person to even come into our lives.
She tries hard to understand, but it's just kind of hard for her too because she doesn't go through the same things that I do. I would like my mom to be more aware of how I'm feeling. I'm doing the best that I can every day, and I don't think she's aware of that.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
I really am, because it was your mother that was shot, but you were impacted by this tremendously as well, correct?
Yeah, yes.
And how does this affect you?
It's affected me every day since. My depression and anxiety. I had it before too, but it definitely worsened it a lot afterwards. Every day is pretty hard for me.
From a mom's standpoint, you say you feel guilty because you brought him in to this situation, and
Correct.
therefore she's been exposed to this.
Yep.
What do you say to yourself about it?
I just know that I had really ignored some red flags, and I justified it at the beginning because she didn't witness the abuse or didn't know that it was occurring. It was a failure to be a parent and to bring a dangerous person into our lives. And to be fair, she said she doesn't know, and I believe that she doesn't necessarily know what triggers her, but just like Monday was a really bad day for her. She couldn't hardly catch her breath. She was crying and didn't know why. She could express to me, she could communicate to me that she was struggling with anxiety. That's when I feel the most guilty. I don't know how to help her.
As Robin will tell you, how many times this has gone from 0 to actual homicide or horrific assaults with no intervening steps whatsoever.
That's exactly right. When you're with an abuser, they have the ability to convince you that life is normal, that they're normal, and they can cause you to believe them and be manipulated by them, and then you cannot see any of the manipulation, and then out of nowhere, they start abusing you. It can be small steps, it can be small things, it can be verbal, and then all of a sudden it turns to physical violence out of nowhere for you. So you can't blame yourself for not being aware of it or seeing the signs. They have their ways of doing that.
And I was definitely in over my head, and I can see that now in hindsight.
Now, there is a new man in Stacy's life, her fiance, Chad. Now, Stacy worries he may not be able to bear the weight of the trauma the man before him left behind. We're going to meet him after the break and find out.
There's definitely a barrier sometimes between Chad and I.
She keeps her emotions to herself, withholding the way that she feels.
I feel like he is wishing we would just let it go. Only recently did I share with my son that the person who I was shot by was his biological father. He said, no, that's not true because Chad is my dad. The reason it's so important to me that I'm honest with him about what took place and why is so he never feels like I withheld information from him or was dishonest with him. It's very conflicting to be the victim as well as the parent. I don't want my son to have any feelings later on in life of some kind of guilt because he knew that was his father. I hope he'll understand that I was just trying to protect him. It stresses me out, but I would like to be able to know how to explain that to him in a way that he can understand it.
Now, Stacy claims when she left her toxic relationship 4 years ago, it ended with her being shot 2 times and left for dead. Now, she says she survived the attack, but worries that her engagement to Chad may not last because of the past.
Because of the past abuse that I endured and the trauma that ended that relationship, I have trust issues. It absolutely impacts my relationship with Chad.
Stacy and I, we met 2 years after she was shot. I'm not much of a news guy. I knew of her story through my parents, but I didn't know all the details. I most definitely did not want to pry. I just wanted to be by her side. In preparation for the show, listening to Stacy and her daughter Ashton go through the interviews, it brought tears to my eyes to know that somebody had to go through that.
There's definitely a barrier sometimes between Chad and I.
She keeps her emotions to herself, withholding the way that she feels at times. It's hard for me to be frustrated about it because of the simple fact I met her 2 years ago and she's been the same for the 2 years.
Chad has never said he wishes I would just let it go. and move on. However, there's been times that I have either brought it up or there's been a reminder, something came up. I feel like he is wishing we would just let it go.
Stacy and I have come from toxic relationships. We want everything to be right. We want everything to be good. At the same time, we're also very protective of ourselves.
I gave myself a couple of years to be by myself, and I felt like initially that was enough time. In hindsight, no, I don't think that I was fully mentally prepared to move on in another relationship.
Chad's a great guy, and I think he's good for my mom. But I think that if my mom did work on herself a little bit more, that the relationship would be a lot healthier.
Well, Chad, I'm glad you're here. I wrote down some of the things you said because I wanted to ask you about them. You said, I didn't really press her because when you get shot, you get shot. There's really nothing else to know. And I'm getting more details as they're doing their phone interviews and stuff. And you say, I don't think her past is the issue in our relationship. Have you changed your thinking about that?
Yeah, I don't recall that. Yeah, no, most definitely. I think everybody's past. I mean, everybody goes through things, and most definitely that's huge. That plays a big part in our relationship, and it's huge.
Yeah, because you said you hadn't really noticed her triggers, and if you're not walking in those shoes, it's easy to miss.
There's a lot of times where Stacy can come home from work and had a long, hard day, just like every day, you know, and I might sense something and say, hey, babe, are you okay? Everything good? And she's going to tell me, yeah, everything's good.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
And that's a lie.
And that's a lie sometimes.
I would say that I was a little bit fearful to pry on, because I don't want to see him cry. I don't want to see him hurt. But at the same time, I want to be there for him to come and talk to me.
Stacy says it's been tough because she never met anyone who's walked in her shoes and truly understands her trauma. Well, we're going to change that today, right after the break.
He was just punching me over and over and over again. Our son was stroking my hair and saying, Dada, stop hurting Mama. Dada, stop it. I knew I was gonna die.
Brianna says it's been 17 years since she was brutally attacked by her boyfriend and father of her 2 children, after she claims she left him for good.
The day that I was brutally attacked by my ex is a day that I will never forget as long as I live. My ex asked if I could bring our son over to his mother's apartment, and I agreed. I walked in through the door. I realized very quickly that this was a bad situation. He grabbed me by the back of the throat, got me down onto a bed. He was just punching me over and over and over again, biting my face, ripping at me everywhere. I literally could hear the bones in my face breaking. I had blood coming out of my ears, my nose. Our son, he was stroking my hair and saying, Mama, it's okay. Dada, stop hurting Mama. Dada, stop it. As he was hitting me, he is looking at me with this disgusting look of pride and rage. And then he started strangling me. He said, I'm going to kill you, and you're going to sit on a pedestal in heaven forever. And then I'm going to kill myself. And I prayed for my children, and I accepted that my death had come. After he got off of me, I was shaking and I was trembling. And he came back in the door, and he had our son beside him. And he had a bat in one hand, and he had a knife in the other hand. And he started laughing at me, and he said, what do you think you're doing? Where do you think you're going? You're not gonna get out of here. You're not gonna make it past me out this door. He said, you're gonna die. And I looked at our son the best that I could because my vision was really blurry. And I said, I love you.
Well, Brianna says she was so desperate to escape his attack that night that she attempted to jump out of a second-story window to safety.
I'm screaming help as loud as I can. I am hanging headfirst out this window, completely nude, because he had ripped my clothes off of me prior to that. He said, "You're not getting away." He was trying to pull me back up into that room, and there was no way I was going back in that room. During that struggle, the large shards of glass, one of them punctured my main artery. I'm bleeding to death with these spurts of blood. I fell approximately 30 feet to the ground. Upon hitting the ground, I saw his head disappear from the window, and I knew he was coming for me. I stood up somehow with all of these injuries, and I started to run, but he caught me. And I remember that feeling of hope being immediately just taken from me. He grabbed me by my hair, and he dragged me through the asphalt into a carport where he started bashing my head, telling me that he's gonna finish me. There was two men. They heard this commotion and they came out. One of them went and chased my ex. I'm just shaking and I just want to know if my son's okay. I was in and out of consciousness while being airlifted, and I actually was resuscitated after clinically, medically dying. Then I regained consciousness while in the trauma unit. My jaw was broken. My cheekbones were broken. My mouth was swollen and sticking together. I had teeth that were missing that were black. All of my ribs were broken. I was screaming. It hurt so bad. It is by the grace of God and my rescuers that I am sitting here today.
As I said to Stacy, I'm glad to meet you on two levels. One just today, and one to be able to meet you because you're still alive. You two women cheated death. What did you think when you were listening to the experience that Stacy and her daughter and niece went through?
Well, first of all, I'm so sorry. And just know that it was never any fault of yours, never any fault of yours. You are incredibly lucky to be here. The reason why you don't know many people who have an experience like yours is because most of them don't make it. We're an exception. You're doing better than you think.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
What do you think when you hear what Brianna went through and how she fought to stay alive?
I was resonating with it. I was feeling that because prior to the shooting, the abuse that you're a survivor as well. I mean, you barely didn't make it either. But when I was hearing your story, I was thinking of, especially with your son being there and trying to save his mama, essentially, you're another hero as well.
If you continue to suffer in this way, he's controlling you from prison. There are things you have to do. It's so important that you really do understand that, you know, you go to the courthouse and you hope that you're going to find some measure of accountability, not justice. You get some accountability there. In this situation, which is the most horrific account you can imagine, your transgressor actually wound up serving only 7 years, correct?
Yes.
Even the judge was appalled at the situation. The judge's response to the jury verdict at sentencing was, and this is a quote, "I've been doing this for a long period of time, handled death penalty cases. This is one of the more egregious cases I've ever had to listen to. I was shocked by the jury verdict, but nevertheless, I'm bound by it. But again, this was one of the more egregious, horrendous cases which I've heard injuries and the conduct of the defendant." So you never know what you're going to get when you go to the courthouse. In your situation, he's in jail for 105 years. So if things go the way they should, he should never take another breath of fresh air, free air, the rest of his life. So if you continue to suffer in this way, he's controlling you from prison. You're giving your power away to him. So you've got to decide, look, I am going to heal, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to reclaim my life in the light. There are things you have to do to manage this, and I'm not saying it'll ever go away. I'm not saying you'll ever forget it. You know, because it's been, you'll never forget this.
Never.
And it can still be very raw. Now, we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna talk to someone that says she was forced to kill her estranged stepfather during a violent attack after her mother left him. That man came to be known as Dirty John. So to complete this circle, we're going to talk to someone that's on the other side of this that had to kill that perpetrator.
Wow.
We'll add her to the conversation after the break. Hey everyone, season 19 is underway.
If you never made it to Hollywood to be a part of the studio audience, well, now it doesn't matter. If you're in Oklahoma, Georgia, Texas, New Jersey, or anywhere else in the world, now you can be a part of our virtual audience.
All you need is a computer and an internet connection. Go to drphil.com and click on Be Part of the Audience for more information. Well, Robin has been an ambassador for the fight against domestic violence and working on behalf of survivors. And she and our foundation, When Georgia Smiled, the Robin McGraw and Dr. Phil Foundation, are devoted to helping victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse. She's a role model for all women and has made it her life's mission to ensure women and children live healthy, safe, and joy-filled lives. Now, Robin also shares a connection with my next guest. It was only 4 years ago when Tara fatally stabbed her estranged stepfather, John Meehan, 13 times after he attacked her. At the time, her mother, Deborah, was in hiding from the man who ended up being an abusive and manipulative con artist. Tara and her mother's story garnered notoriety with the hugely successful podcast and scripted series, Dirty John. Please welcome a dear friend of Robin's, Tara Newell. Hey, Tara.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
Good to see you. You've been listening to everything we've been talking about.
Yes. Nice to meet you.
And this is really what we're down to focusing on right now is really coping with, digging out of, handling the aftermath of these horrific traumas that you have to go through and deal with. And you saw your attack was a clear case of separation assault. You believe he was trying to hurt you and to hurt your mom, no question about it, right?
Yes, no question about that.
These kind of injuries, these kind of psychological damage and injuries, these just don't go away. They have to be managed, true?
When you go through trauma, after the attack, you're in fight or flight mode. And that's when you get these triggers. It brings you back to the event, and then you're in that mode. So you need to really rewire your brain to not have those triggers and also kind of figure out what your triggers are.
You know, you see women that fight through this, and a big part of it is replacing the obsession with it, the domination of their thinking with it, with getting back to their lives and getting back to a career, getting back to parenting, getting back to joy, getting back, and you know, that's what you work on through the shelters and rehabilitating these women in their lives.
That's right, and that's one thing that I've really been so impressed with Tara, because she endured witnessing the abuse of her mother and for years, and knew that she couldn't really do anything, and then it finally ended with her abuse and her having to end his life. So it was very, of course, very traumatic for her over a period of time, and then ending with such a traumatic event. And over the last 4 years, Tara has done such an amazing job of working through her trauma by giving back to others and doing what she can to help herself, help her mother, but also creating a way to give back to others and help others who are also survivors. And I've just been so impressed with Tara's hard work and her great hope to help others. So she's done that in many ways, especially with a podcast and in so many ways, and really doing a beautiful job. So I'm so proud of Tara.
Thank you so much. I'm like, I love your light so much.
Thank you.
One of the things that we talk about is, Tara mentioned that it really gets down to rewiring your brain. You really change your internal dialogue and what you say to yourself about what happened and in response to triggers that take you back to what happened. And as Robin points out, it really helps to pay it forward and help other people because that's very gratifying, true?
Yes, a lot of my healing has come through helping others.
How does Stacy stop allowing her attack to define her life, disrupt her life, and keep her from doing everything that she wants to do? Same question for Ashton. She wants to be the best mother to her daughter that she possibly can be, to her son that she possibly can be. So I'm going to tell her where I think she needs to start right after the break. Well, I'm back with Robin. Stacy is with us. Brianna is with us. Tara Newell is with us. Ashton's in the audience with Chad. And we've been talking about really the tragic reality of domestic violence. Then we're focused on the aftermath. PTSD is a disorder. Yes. It does need treatment. You have to deal with it. Ashton has to deal with it. We're in a pandemic, so I think the best therapy that you can do right now is teletherapy.
Okay.
And you watch all the time, so you know about Doctor on Demand, which is the company that Jay started and that I'm involved with. And it allows you to do teletherapy and work with PhD level, doctoral level therapists. If you need medical as well, then Doctor on Demand handles that as well. And I want to arrange that for you and Ashton both. I want to start with the two of you, with like 10 sessions on Doctor on Demand, with each having your own therapist, and see where we are at that point. You may need some trauma workshops at that point, and if you do, then we'll talk about on-site. We'll do whatever is necessary. You deserve to heal from this. You deserve to put this in your rear view. If you at home want to have your own Doctor on Demand, you can go to Google Play Store or the Apple App Store and download the Doctor on Demand app. And by the way, during the pandemic, Doctor on Demand is waiving copays to make it easier for you to see a board-certified doctor from the safety of your home. Look, I want to thank all of my guests today. A special thanks to Tara Newell. Thank you for coming and visiting with all of this. For more information about Tara's podcast, Time Out with Tara, please go to taranewell.com. And if you would like more information about today's episode, you can log on to drphil.com. You can join me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You can find me everywhere. And I'll do a shameless plug about whengeorgiasmiled.org, because Robin works tirelessly with these shelters. And that's where you really do your work, right, is directly with the shelters?
Yes, it is. I'm very proud when I get to go into the shelters and interact with these women and men. And I want to say now that to all of you women that I'm so honored to be just in your presence today. And I would love to extend the opportunity to be able to reach out to all of you and through your Doctor on Demand time, and especially to Ashton. And I know that Tara joins me in saying that if there's ever anything we can do to join you and be there for you, please reach out to me and to the two of us, please, because we both agree that you did not deserve that experience in your life that day, nor did your mother. And you deserve to have a joy-filled life and to be happy and to move on from this experience, from that traumatic experience. So I'm here for you. Tara's here for you. So reach out anytime, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you get these two wound up, and there's no telling what you... I've listened to them. All right, listen, if you or someone you know is being abused and needs support, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. You can also log on to thehotline.org. Help is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Be safe, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for being here. So long.